right, welcome to the Bryce Eddy Show. So today, my buddy Siaka Massaquoi is back. We're going to talk news. We've got several topics: LA riots, Democrats, their reaction to such things, and then we'll get into World War III. How are you, my brother?
Light topics. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me as always.
Yeah, so you got a little one bacon in the oven, about ready to be delivered.
Yeah.
We were just talking about
Oh
that.
man.
That's exciting. I'm super
Yeah.
thrilled for you there.
A little girl. I'm nervous. Excitedly nervous. It just I'm playing with Xavier today, right before they put him down for a nap, and I'm just like, man, this is a real little person. Like we're doing stuff. He's pushing my arm, but then he wants to wrestle, and he has this like his own personality, and while it's comfortable, it's also kind of mind blowing because it's on you. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like it's you. This is the life that you're charged with protecting, and it's just still kind of wild. And then now like having another, I'm like I have another one of these little things coming. Like oh my goodness,
Yeah,
like
what'll be crazy for you there is, and you won't realize this until, she is born, right? In that
mm,
moment, you'll be like, "Wow, I do not know you." So you
yeah,
didn't have the contrast when Xavier was born. You were just like, "Whoa," and deer in the headlights, "This is my little baby. Wow," and you're just like blown away. But like him now. He is,
yeah,
his
yeah, yeah,
personality, you kind of know you guys are developing a relationship, and
yeah,
you don't have a relationship with this one yet. and
yeah.
and it's just a different kind of weird contrast at first, and then you guys will immediately see just personality differences from just the first few weeks even,
S-
and it's really wild, man. It
You
is a
see that
cool thing.
that's the part that's like kind of blowing my mind because you're right. I hadn't put it together like that, but it's getting to know Xavier. That's the only baby we've ever had, right? So
Yeah,
you kind
and
of
you have you have a relationship with them,
yeah.
that you did not have, because again, you can't contrast it because your first child, you just everything's new.
Everything's new.
But the second one, it's pretty profound, man. And
Wow.
yeah,
Huh.
my second one, but she came out, screaming at the world kind of a thing. And our first was just mellow and chill and a
See,
little cry and a little sweetness and everything. And then our
ah,
second one was like angry,
see,
you know.
see
Yeah,
that's oh man, that's what we're thinking that's gonna happen. We're just like Xavier was so just like, okay, what's going on here?
yeah,
I'm outside now, where
yeah.
we think she's gonna come out with this raging thunder. So
Well, it
pray
might,
for us.
no, but it's exciting, man. And also
That's
you
cool.
having a baby girl is pretty exciting because we're going to see the softer side of you, and
Yeah.
it's really fun. It's a different
Oh,
unique relationship. So I'm excited for you, man.
we did actually, thank you. We did see Charlotte went to a ultrasound today, and we got a picture of her face. So now we
Oh
saw
yeah.
her face, and it's like, oh, bro, because she actually kind of looks like Xavier did, and
Well, I mean, dude, you got the new technology, man. 20 years
yeah,
ago, it
yeah.
was still like the, old school, like, what is that? Is that an alien? I don't know. Oh, that's a
Yeah,
foot. Okay.
that's okay. It's like now to have
Yeah.
like 3D imaging
Oh,
where you
it's
see the
wild.
side of her face, it's
Yeah.
pretty crazy.
No, what they can do now is just it's unbelievable. I mean, yeah, that did not exist when,
Yeah,
when we were having our kids.
in like
Well,
10 years, you're gonna see the person just going like, "Uh, everything's
yeah,
good,
they're
keep it
gonna
coming."
project on baby clothes, on the app so you can decide what you want to pick,
Right,
yeah. It'd be
exactly,
weird.
exactly.
It's bizarre. They're gonna do some kind of weird AI interface and the baby's gonna talk to you, you know.
Yep. Oh my goodness.
Eat
Oh,
more ice cream, mom. Yeah.
please.
Um, all right. Well, hey, let's talk some news, man.
Oh
Um,
man.
so I did do an episode, and people can check it out on the show. With the Center for Security Policy, Kyle Scheidler, and we talked about the fact that these LA riots and all of these, No Kings protests and everything, they were not organic. They were manufactured. They were bought and paid for. Many of these protesters are professional
Busted.
protesters. This is what they do. It's a little hobby or a side gig for them, or in some cases, it's all they really do because they live with their parents. And so they're going to make a little scratch. going out into the street, and then you get the mob going, and then they're burning cars and, doing other things. And that's what they want. They want that chaos. And, the news has continued with their fiction that these protests were peaceful protests. And they said it's something, I think somebody did an analysis. They said it 541 times. Oh, peaceful protest, peaceful protest. Meanwhile, all you got to do is go on free speech platforms like X and see them burning cars and,
Well,
all
they're
kinds of
peacefully burning.
violence and fighting with the cops and everything like that. So, love to hear your take on it, brother.
Well, oh man! First off, we got to. I know the big elephant in the room was the fact that the National Guard and Marines were brought in, and I actually think that quelled how peaceful it could have gotten. We could have
Oh yeah.
really gotten, the Summer of Love 2.0, and I think it squashed it because it showed. And even when we saw with the No Kings protest, how yeah, there were some big numbers in certain places, but the impact wasn't what I think it was planned to be, and to spill over into what it did in 2020, because they saw what the response was going to be and what happened in LA, which was brilliant move, and kudos to President Trump for that. But recently, and Bryce, you'll find this hilarious, and so the audience. But recently, the with the mayor standing by her side, I think the city commissioner, they had posted, it was like 11.4, 11.5 million dollars in damages done in the city for during their riots, and they blamed it on Trump, and they are demanding that the federal government pay for the damage that were done by rioters who, as they claimed, wouldn't have rioted if they hadn't escalated the amount of protection that was brought in. Then followed up story is Nathan Hochman, the new DA of Los Angeles, has charged multiple people with multiple felonies, including, I'm not sure a lot of people saw the image of the person throwing a rock over the overpass and hitting a LAPD. Yeah. So that person is going to get charged with felony charges as well. So the city saying it's city officials are saying it's the Trump administration's fault and they owe them money, and your DA is actually charging people who committed those those violent acts with felonies. It's
Yeah. Well,
you
again,
can't make it up, bro.
yeah, and it is indisputable. The evidence is there, that they have been paid, that
Yeah,
they were, again, not organic, not people taking to the streets under, the real concern, for what ICE is doing. ICE was going and, prosecuting their duties, which is to keep illegal aliens out of our country. That is their purpose, and that's what they were effectively doing. And they have started with the criminal elements. They've started going after the cartels. We know who they're going after. And oh, by the way, President Trump, when the farm communities and the hotel industry and others, because I believe very firmly, and I have clients in that space, that we need to have worker programs, and I think we should. I think there are ways that we can bless the people that want to come here and work. I think there are ways that we can fast track for those jobs, and that's where I'd like to see our efforts. Let's have people self-deport who can. We have already had reports that about 1 million people have self-deported.
yes, yep,
So we had to create an environment that was no longer a free-for-all magnet for people to come here, right? But what we have to do is we do need to bless and take care of all of those folks that are genuinely putting into our system and behaving and all that, because it's essentially our fault, and it is not just the Biden administration, but it's previous administrations, including Republican administrations,
yeah.
including Ronald Reagan, who did an amnesty program, and then they failed to actually secure the border. And you cannot do an amnesty program and then fail to secure the border, fail to create programs that don't incentivize them to come here. We should not be giving illegal aliens benefits and things like that. But if you do it right, let's get the best of the people here. We do need people that want to work. We do need people who want to do good here in the United States. And so I'm all for us figuring out a process to do that. And
Well,
we've failed there.
well, and I agree with you there that there's a lot of failures. One of the things that I noticed, and this will be not necessarily in support of DEI, but in support of what they say DEI is, where it's like, oh, it
Right.
forces companies to go outside where they'll usually look. I'm kind of thinking that's what this will do for the farmers, the service staff, industries,
Hospitality, right.
hospitality. It's like, okay, well, now you're not going to get a busload of illegals. Maybe go to an area that they're poor in and start to put out flyers. Like, this will force what they say DEI actually does. This will then have to force the farmers to go, okay, well, we're going to look in these areas because we know people are looking for work in these
Mhm.
areas and will come
Yeah,
out. So I
I
think
think
that
you
it will
can.
put a weight on that, and let's see what that looks like first before we try to just open an avenue where, like, for example, the person coming from Guatemala knows they can get a job at hospitality or working on the farms. They just know that. Why? Because NGOs or whoever else is telling them, family
Sure.
members sending money. Does that same, the person that same age in Compton know that there's a farm they can work up north? I would
Well,
argue it's not the same thing, but it's like, why
yeah,
don't we
no,
start?
no, they don't. But we do have, as you know, we have problems within our urban community where those jobs they're considering beneath them, so they'd rather cash
Right.
government welfare checks, and we have to clean up that system as well. So I mean, there's
Yeah.
when you look at these things, and this is where both Dems and Republicans, I think, get it wrong, is we created through decades of really bad policy on both sides. We created this complex web that is, really detrimental to our workers, detrimental to our industries, and detrimental to those communities that are out of work and relying on our welfare system and things
Right.
like that. I think all of these efforts, you'd have to go through a very painful period, like
Yeah.
pulling back on certain welfare benefits, really ratcheting the rules up to make sure people are actually working, just not pretending to look for jobs, which is a
Right.
lot of
Right.
what goes on. They pretend to go and try to find gainful employment. I mean, I watched a couple of family members, game it like that, back in the day to stay on
Oh yeah.
extended unemployment. They were faking like they were looking for jobs,
Oh, dude,
it's
and
terrible.
I did it. When I didn't know, I did it because I was like, I'm gonna get an audition, I'm gonna get a role, and that would be more than whatever job that corner store job. And here's the other side, though, Bryce, as you were saying, like, the people who are gaming the system, it's not set up to be that hard to not game. You know what I
Correct.
mean? Like at one point,
Yeah,
you're
someone will always game it. Don't make it easy.
yeah, they make it easy by, like, they don't really double check as
Right.
much as they should. Like, did you sit down and actually have a conversation, or did you go up? Because I would go up and talk to the person and the people. Here's the other side. A lot of the people in the area, especially around the building, they'd know what this was, and they'd be like, "Ah, here, I'll sign it. I don't even have like, I didn't have to go through a spiel of like, hey, I'm looking for work and da 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 da. Like, yeah,
Right.
let me sign it. You're out, and you're like, oh wow, it's so just like not anything. And kudos again to the Trump administration for the big beautiful bill being like, hey, you have to be working for this thing right here to exist, so that it like you said, it's going to be a painful period, but I think it's going to turn people around in a way where if you're showing them you have to pay, you can work at this hotel, you have to pay this person this living wage that they've been talking about. Now you don't have people undercutting, so the like real wages can actually go up for a lot of people. Now these individuals in the area that they see, well, maybe not running to the gang life is a way to go. I have something to build on top of. Like, I kind of I think again, it's going to be some time, but I think this is a good move overall for everyone. It's a really good move for everybody.
It's great. It's great. Well, hey, let's talk about Padilla. because I know you got a kick out of that, and so did I.
Yes.
Look, there's all these guys that want to perform publicity stunts and play some of these games. So why don't you set it up for the audience who
So
haven't seen the clip?
this a sitting United States senator from California, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, so I'll just say Padilla, Senator Padilla. Christy Nome is there in Los Angeles, and she's doing a speech, and Padilla decides in the middle of her speech now to throw a Democrat tantrum and try to rush her, and in the guise of I'm just asking a question, which is really kind of wild when you consider that's not how you do it. But he tried to rush the stage, and of course, her security, who all look like they lift all the time, every day, grab him, take him outside. Then he announced, "Oh well, no, I'm a senator. I'm a U.S. senator." Then they take him outside, put him to the ground. He's still fighting to go to the ground. He's like, I'm going to the ground. They cuff him up, take him away. I guess at the end of the day, everything ended amicably, and it wasn't a big deal. She said she talked to him and exchanged phone numbers. But of course, the Democrats used that on the floor to scream for an investigation and to say she should retire right away. And it's just the amount of, I don't know, bratitude. Can we make that a word? Bratitude that that these people have is it's mind blowing. Like, you can rush someone's stage and then they start spinning it right away and saying, "I can't believe this even happened. This was wild." Like, wouldn't you want your security to grab somebody if they rushed
Oh
that? Like,
yeah, no. Somebody rushes the stage. You don't get their ID first. And you don't also. It doesn't matter what they're saying.
yeah,
I've watched plenty of videos where there's a guy armed, suspicious, doing something suspicious, and the cops are like, "Hey, get down the ground," and they're screaming that they're law enforcement or they're supposed to be there. Bro, you comply. Don't be
yeah.
arrogant, don't be dumb. They don't know. People impersonate, people do all kinds of things. That's why there's actual statute about impersonating law enforcement,
Dude,
because it happens all the time,
I mean, we
so
saw that.
yeah,
We just saw that in Minnesota, like, somebody impersonating a police officer and taking out literal senators. Like, what? Like,
that's right. That's right. Yeah. So this guy was an idiot. It was a public stunt to try to confront her on camera. Remember, they're going to do any opportunity they can to create these kind of kerfuffles,
right.
so that they can call for people's they're incompetent. They must resign. Look at what
Fascism.
her fascist security did
Yeah.
to a sitting senator. Yeah.
Like,
No, it's all foolishness, and it's all what we expect from, the turds on the left.
so I'm gonna put on my conspiracy tinfoil jacket and hat right now for you guys, because this is what I'm thinking with everything going on with these I should go do the Trump this way with all this immigration crackdown to the highest level, and the raid that's going to be happening in these blue cities. And I watched another Padilla, actually, who's a city council member. She was talking to the chief of police in LA and asking if he can set up a system where he can alert individuals in the city when ICE is going to commit a raid, right? And he's like, no, that's illegal. I can't do that. She's like, why not? And her nervous behavior there, I gotta believe, if you're gonna have in these cities where they're running these gang organizations, are running millions and millions of dollars between women, trafficking women, drugs, and weapons, that some of these sitting leaders, the people who are in leadership, that they aren't privy or taking a cut somewhere like the big guy did. It's hard for me to believe that a city like that, who would purposely, called down the police to, tell them to stand down when riots happened. When, you remember, that big train was robbed in LA, and Gavin was like, "Oh, what? I can't believe it happened. We lost $24 billion that was supposed to go to the homelessness, but yet we're supposed to believe that they had no idea this stuff's going on." So I'm thinking these raids may connect to some people that are afraid and that have been in elected position. That's just me in watching their response. No one's told me anything else. I'm just watching people who seem really nervous that illegal criminals are getting round up in a fashion they've never seen before. That's just wanted to put that out there for you guys.
Well, look, again, destroy the magnet, which are the benefits that they get coming over here. Correct the asylum system, because here, and I've probably said this on the show before, but I am not big on fake asylum seekers, and of course, I mean that's sort of a no brainer statement, but I'm also not big on asylum in general. Because here's the problem. Most of what you look at as far as people who are gaming our system, it is mostly younger, military aged or fighting class males.
Right.
If you have a regime in a country that needs to be overturned, it's only young fighting age males that can create the pressure within that society so that that corrupt person can
Yeah.
actually get overturned. And if you export all them out, then what happens is, the young single males, even if they're coming here to work and send money back, they're providing an economic engine so that those leaders or despots in those countries can continue to oppress what are now the elderly and women and children.
Wow.
And so it is not always good for a society for us to allow the young single military aged males to be exported out into our country. And now there's obvious exceptions to that. I think that that's where, like, I'm not big, and we'll talk on this in a moment, on us fighting foreign wars or things like that. But
Right,
there's
right, right.
all kinds of things that we can do to wage war, and we did it successfully in the past. Economic sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and things like that to rout out some of those evil despots. But we need like right now, what is happening in Iran is um, there are, the Ayatollah Khomeini, when he took over in the Iranian Revolution, I think it was 1979. I could be
Yeah,
wrong
like yeah,
on the date, but prior to that, Iran looked like a version of America. It looked like a democracy. They had, the women weren't
yeah.
wearing burqas. They were wearing 1970s fashion. The
Right.
kids were in school. I mean, there's wonderful footage of this. My uncle, who is from Iran, my uncle Ali is one of my favorite uncles. Came over during that time, and fled the country and was able to come over here, go to school. One of the hardest working men I know, came through legal process.
That's how you do it.
But he talks about what his country was like prior to that. I mean, it was phenomenal, and he came over here as a teenager, and it was night and day, and it got taken over by Islamic extreme religious forces, like so much of what happened in the Middle East. And now the Middle East, Iran has been the greatest antagonist over in the Middle East, the greatest supporter of terror, the greatest supporter of unrest. The evil regime, supporting the attacks on Israel and others, and just more and more extreme behavior over there. There is, because Iran, we aren't accepting, and many of them cannot escape. There is a fomenting, bubbling up
Mm,
revolution against the Ayatollah that is happening right now, and even some of his deputies and people that do have wealth in that culture would like to see some change. And so there is a way that we can support that. I'm not opposed to what Israel's doing. I'm not a comic Dave Smith who pretends like war is never an option. I'm not one of those guys that think that the Jews are evil aggressors, and the problem that we have on the planet like is happening so much on the woke right. I mean, it's
right.
amazing how many people have become Jew haters overnight. I mean, there's two really terrible illnesses right now. TDS is probably the first, and IDS is the second. I mean, there is this, delusion, this derangement syndrome that's happening about by these Jew haters that are just asking questions. all over. And the truth is the current Iranian regime going down in the favor of not us manipulating it, not us sending troops over there to do it, but letting Israel and the forces that exist within Iran that would like to see it return to, pre-revolution era. I think that is on the table right now in a serious way. And I'm not a warmonger, but I'm not opposed to war.
So, and I agree with a lot of what you just said. So, because it just as you were speaking, it just hit me though too. Is this idea too of not not removing and allowing so many of these military aged men in areas that need, like you say, that pressure to be built, um, in a certain sense too, because we've seen throughout history individuals like those young men that step up, or young women like Sophie Shaw did.
Yeah.
It puts people in a different mindset that they may not get into if all these men are not pressing back. You may
We
not have
need we
your
need
moderates come in.
positive revolutionaries.
Yeah.
And if you remove all of the, look, women can foment and encourage a revolution from within, but that is not the only thing you need. In fact, primarily, you need men.
Any
You
force.
need strong men that are willing to fight and willing to actually physically and kinetically put themselves on the line. And so if you remove them from a society, then you will just have the oppressors in charge. And there are, like, I mean, the heir to Iran, the family, of the Shah and
Hmm.
others still exist. And Patrick Bet David, has
Really?
had many of those guys on, and they are poised and ready to come in and help repair and
Wow.
reestablish a democracy, Western style, with its Iranian flair. But
Excited
Iran
Arabia.
needs a revolution, and we should be helpful. And the Bible does say, bro, that there is a time for peace, but there is a time for war.
Oh
So,
yeah.
Comic Dave Smith and some of those guys that don't believe that, or are acting like the only reason we've had wars is because of the Jewish people. I mean, it's absurd.
Well, my thought too. I'm like, honestly, I was like, yeah, let them get this thing done. Like it's one of those situations where, and I love, when you're talking about there's multiple ways to wage it. Like, I think people forgot what they saw recently when Trump just went over to the Middle East and the countries that were there and shaking his hands and excited to be a part of this conversation. Iran was not one of those countries. There was a reason. Now, when the move is like this is made, are those other countries like Qatar, like Saudi Arabia, or anything like that, are they going to be more or less willing to support Iran in this situation? So you kind of really have, when you make these business deals, you kind of really have, Iran seems to be now surrounded all the way around to a certain extent, maybe except for Turkey, but there's wiggle room there, um, to really kind of be isolated, right? And I just saw some with Putin and China threatening the U.S. if they do anything, they'll do something or whatever. But like you said, I think it's this is a time for it to shift. And I personally would like to see Israel work in it, like really do it, like go for it, and do what needs to be done, and but keep it in that region, because this is also some long-term stuff, right, that we're talking about. They're like, let them have it, let them go after it. We already have money that's allocated to go to Israel, so that is what it is. If people leave it alone, but let them do it, and I'm rooting for Israel to come out on
No,
top in this situation.
Israel is capable
Oh
with
yeah.
our big brother backing, and I'm okay with that. I mean, again, I am not a fool looking to enrich myself by war. And there's many of those guys out there. Just ask Lindsey Graham; he works for them. But there is but there's a mindset that war is never necessary, and that is just simply not true. Now, we do not need to
Not at all.
send We do not need to send our troops over there. Israel is capable of doing this with some of our strategic support,
Mm.
and there is economic support and other things that we can do. And no, Israel is not the tail wagging our dog as much as all of the IDS affected influencers out there seem to believe. But we need to see
Well,
the Middle East. There is a possibility to calm tensions in the Middle East, and having Iran, having a positive Iranian revolution can be one of the biggest reasons for kind of a more posture of peace there in the Middle East.
well, one of the things that you pointed out, you're saying you're surprised to see this huge growth. Almost seemed like overnight of this like hate towards Jewish people or the Jewish nation of Israel. And my big brother said this to me as well. I think a year ago when all the protests happened, I'm like, dude, honestly, there's been this undercurrent of anti-Jewish sentiment since I've been a kid, since the '90s, and I think it's come in two folds where it's still that Marxism, like oppressor oppressed type of thing. But when you only mention the Holocaust mentioned, every once in a while around the celebration, but you kind of describe it, they've been describing Islam as this beautiful religion, right, throughout the years, and then when you look over at the countries, you go, well, they kind of put up who their biggest enemy is, and then this Israel is who they present. You're in school learning it's so beautiful. The Quran is one of the most beautiful, written texts of all time, and it could be, but it is what it is. While you're doing that, then you look to the country and go, well, this beautiful country, who's their number one enemy? You go, well, Israel, they're holding them back. Well, I have kind of heard these people, this has been happening, and this religion is about peace and love, peace and love. Honestly think that they haven't been teaching, just like they haven't been teaching what communism really is. They haven't really been teaching what Islam really is, right? And when you start to see kind of what the core of the fight comes to, and it's all just this Seth said, the proxy war for the spirit, you look at it as a battle of religions. And if you don't really know what this one religion, you have gays for Palestine's running around not understanding, dude, you get what this is. So to me, as you pointed out, there is, a time for war. The Bible speaks of war. There's a war between good and evil. There's a war that's been going on longer than we've been around as human beings. And so why would we believe that it just stops here because we're bigger and better than what created us? Like, no, dude, who created us? I'm like, no, I think that this is a war that will always happen because there's always these proxy wars going on, especially for humankind. This is just another example of
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I think you're absolutely right. And and again, I think we would benefit, the world would benefit, the Middle East would benefit
it.
to,
Yeah.
have the, Ayatollah and his evil, long-standing regime go down. And so, Israel has been in very few days very, very effective on that,
Right.
and really reduced their capabilities to wage war, and reduce their capabilities even internally in some ways to oppress their opposition. And where I would like is to see us on both a diplomatic footing, but also on a, hey, we got your back, Iranian revolutionaries. And I
Mhm.
know Israel has taken that stance too. Let's take out this regime. Let's encourage those revolutionaries. Let's give them support, and not abandon them like we did Afghanistan and other places where we attempted this. We have a horrible track record of every other administration dropping the ball,
Well,
and we saw that with Biden and their Afghani pullout.
that's why I think like this should be a very clear Israel versus Iran type of war. Because I think if it's clear like that and Israel ends up winning, when they hand the keys over to, the insurgents, if you will, that's helping out. Now it's a different thing than even what we did in Iraq or Afghanistan, where like we led but not really needing to be around there for the long haul or to be around there for different reasons. I think if Israel's leading the way, Israel's doing this. This is their neighbor. That means it seems like more of a vested interest that that country has to work out. Like it can't just be a workout, but yet I'm living over in Virginia. So if it doesn't, oh man, that sucks, right? It's like I'm right here in Tel Aviv. If it doesn't work out, they're sending money back to Hezbollah and Hamas. Like it needs to work out. So I think Israel taking the lead on this. Like when I look at people like Lindsey Graham and my guy Ted Cruz, who I love, but watching him on Tucker and the way they kind of excitedly wanted to jump into the war fight, is at the U.S. leading the way. I'm like, that's a mistake. You can have Israel lead the way, finish the job, and have a vested interest, especially on the world stage, to make sure that Iran works for that area. Like it just, I don't know, that it had to me. It's just that makes more sense.
Yeah, I agree, man, and I want to keep seeing how all of this develops,
Yeah.
and we need to be praying, for the Iranian people. We need to be praying for Israel. We need to be, praying for peace. We need to be praying for Ukraine. We need to be praying for, the Russian people. We need to be, praying that, wise leaders will make good decisions. And if war is waged, it will be waged in as clean a way as humanly possible to reduce the unintended casualties and, the innocents. But we do need to look, I talk about it on this show, and regularly, I'm not afraid to talk about it, but we have a collision course right now that is unstoppable between us and Islam and those radical forces that animate much of what's going on in the Middle East. If we did not have those guys declaring their hatred for Jews and stating that Jews and Christians should be murdered, which is that is fundamentalist.
Antifada.
That is fundamentalist doctrine, in Islam and Quran. It's not a joke. It's not an extreme faction of them that believe that. That does not exist in Christianity. Now you can point to historical war that the Bible reports, but that is not the message of the Christian is not pay up, convert, or die. We want ground up individual decisions to be made because people love Jesus and want to surrender their life to him, not at the point of a sword.
Right. And and you hit it on the head when you said it was a collision course, because we're seeing, and it's not just Islam, we're on a collision course also, I think, with the godless like Marxism and socialists, because if you look at places like Europe and England and parts of Canada, they've allowed Islam to take over for the chaos that it brings, while kind of sitting behind their gated community to hold on to the power that they believe they are owed because their fathers went to this, illustrious school. So you see, like, it's really to me a collision course with Islam and that is a battle that's been going on forever, which is to me the godless who believe they're gods themselves.
That's right.
So it's a really fascinating time, because you do have, as JD Vance said when he was at that one summit, about, do we even share the same values anymore? And you're starting to see that this leadership in a lot of the West has allowed Islam to take over, and you kind of see why. Personally, I see why the Crusades happened, because that was initially a response to Islam taking over the Middle East and North Africa, not where it originated, but where they ended up taking over, right?
And I plug on this show because you'll hear the real history actually in their contemporary Arabic voices. If you read Raymond Ibrahim's books, Sword and the Scimitar or Defenders of the West, which he takes the actual direct sources that lived in those times on the Arab side. He speaks Arabic. He's a Coptic Christian. He's a historian, and they talk about what they were doing. This is an age-old battle, and it's something that we need to be, very cognizant of, and
Yeah.
otherwise, all of Europe is going to cease to exist, and we are next. All right, brother. Hey,
Yeah.
where, last comments, and then where are we going to find you and support you and all that good stuff?
Well, last comment is everyone who's watching, pray for my family and I as we get ready to welcome in this new little girl. I'll pray for Charlotte as she goes and gets ready for the C-section. But you guys can find me on X at _ Siaka Massaquoi, Instagram at Siaka _ Massaquoi, and stay tuned this winter for a musical Christmas story called The Best Thing About Christmas, which I am in as well. So you guys check that out and always find me on Fox Late Night with Trace Gallagher.
Wonderful. All right, brother. I appreciate you. Love you to
Yes.
death. To God be
Love
the
you too.
glory. And we are out. Hey, thank you for watching or listening to this show. If you are someone who listens to us on the podcast apps, please go to our Rumble channel. Even if you're not going to watch us there, we'd appreciate you hitting subscribe. We want to boost those numbers up and make sure that that channel continues to grow. But again, thank you so much for listening to us.